30 minutes.
That's the same for us.
Hmm? Yeah.
Mismatch of expectations.
There's
a mismatch of expectations.
Yes. Yeah. So why are you here, by the way?
We don't know.
Ah, okay. That was my impression, because I noticed puzzled looks on your faces. What's going on here? Where am I? What was the conference, by the way? I was not here yesterday. I arrived yesterday evening. How was yesterday? Good?
Yes, some really good talks.
Okay. What do you remember of yesterday's talks?
Yeah, especially the key talk.
Oh, by Boris?
Boris, where it says, okay, well, there's a communication environment and all stuff, and the other guys always said, no, it's not really only communication, it's more about empathy between the people and being connected and stuff. But the key is always the mindset has to change and how to change the mindset and the different approaches, how we might be able to change it.
Yeah, which is one of the things we're going to talk now. Anything else? Do you guys remember anything from yesterday's? Tell me something about yesterday. I was not here.
Well, what was new for me also in connection with the first of the day was with the gamification. The gamification as a mean for motivating and also
engaging.
Not only extrinsic motivation, but also intrinsic motivation.
That was yesterday.
Yesterday was also a workshop there. And it is fitting good to the first lot of Jürgen in the morning, because he is also taking over some parts from that, and it was quite interesting to me.
Yep.
The audience here has no limits. You underestimate the people here. We were trying to go across the limits to prove a point, and we failed utterly.
That's a problem.
Yes. we said nobody will go down on force. No, you're just horrible. You cannot manage. You will be challenged here. It's really interesting.
Actually, I speak at a lot of conferences, but this one I like. I was really surprised last year, because it was the first year, and it was already a very good conference on its first year. So I like the community, the topics, so it was very good. And it's improving, so how many of you are from this region? I'm intentionally vague. Yeah, I know you're from Vienna. Yeah. Okay. Anybody not from Austria except me? Where are you from, guy?
I live in Berlin.
Berlin.
Yeah.
Okay. You live in Berlin?
Yeah, I'm from Berlin, is the origin.
Okay.
I'm from Tel Aviv.
Okay. Almost the same.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Not from Austria? No. So it's a local conference. Good. Good. How do you guys manage with the English speaking sessions? You guys okay? Because I've been organizing a conference in Venice for the last 3 years. The third edition will be in September. But the first 2 years we kept it as an Italian conference. So all presentations were in Italian. Because Italians in general are not very comfortable with foreign languages. Actually, they're not very comfortable with their own language. But especially foreign languages. So, but this year we are inviting a few foreign speakers, and we'll see how it goes. Because we want to make it an international conference.
So maybe half the audience.
What?
Half of the audience there. Do all this.
It's a possibility, and which is why we doubled the price of the ticket. Or maybe we use the audience because of the higher prices, and we'll never know. It's a very messy experiment.
And then you change that in the fourth year to Italian, and you can keep the price.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good business model.
Yeah, and we can claim, see, now we're giving it to you in Italian conference for just double the price. That will work. Okay, so is it okay if we start? I mean, it's 1:06. Okay. We already started, actually. It was a nice conversation. So, but let's officially start. So I'm not, as I mentioned, I'm not going to use slides or anything for this talk. So that's my name, Andrea Provaglio. And as I mentioned, I'm Italian. I speak at a lot of conferences in Europe. I lived in the US for 4 years. Back in the days when I was more on the technical side of IT. But for the last 10 years, 12 years, I moved to agile organizational stuff, people, all that fluffy things, like empathy. So what I do these days, of course, in the first years of my career, I worked mostly with teams, but more and more I moved to the organizational level. Now, by organizational level, I don't necessarily mean scaling agile, which is one aspect, but organizational means that, when you try to bring agile in other functions of the company, which are not necessarily technical, but you want to bring agile to marketing, you want to bring agile to HR, you want to bring agile to business development, you want to bring agile to budgeting, to contracts. So when you move agile outside of the technical arena, it's a different story, it's a different game. Especially because people working in different areas of the company have different mindset than technical people. So for a marketing person, after all, running experiments is almost normal, right? For a marketing person. For a financial person, running experiments doesn't sound too good, right? So it's a different story. And there's also, of course, the concept, the problem of scaling. Because if you adopt agile in a small environment, like a small company with 10 people, it's kind of easy. There's a lot of communication already in place. Informal communication is there already. You don't have external dependencies, so it's much easier. But when you start having 5, 10, 20, 50 teams interconnected somehow, either because they work on the same product or because they do different things, but they are interdependent, it becomes more complicated. And then you see things like SAFe, which you can mention this morning, less, which I like a little better, because to me less is more of a descaling approach rather than a scaling framework. Less is not about scaling agile, it's about descaling the organization, so the organization can be more agile. So there's all these things. And now the reason why I'm telling you all this is because it's a problem that I've been facing for the last few years. And the problem is that when I try to bring change into the organization, one of the problems that I run into is preconceptions and language. When what I mean is that you start talking with people about something and you use a certain word, and that word resonates in their mind in a way that is not what you meant. Because we all have our preconceptions and internal stories and internal expectations. So if you say leadership to 10 different people, you get 10 different understandings of leadership, for instance. You get 11. 11, yeah. I mean, the same person can, yeah, absolutely. And then there's another thing, that when you start working at organizational level, you start understanding that organizations basically are made up, or can be observed from 3 different perspectives. One perspective is the organizational structure. Another perspective is the organizational policies. And another aspect is the organizational metrics. Structure, policies, and metrics. Now, the reason why I don't know why this is so exact. You see?
It's animated.
Huh?
It's animated.
Absolutely.
That's just like
It's live. And so the reason why so what I was telling you, the reason why I'm talking about this stuff is because at some point I realized that I needed a way to promote change in the organization without triggering any preconceptions in people's mind. And it is something very simple to understand and at the same time flexible enough that it can adapt to different contexts easily. And so I came up with, there's a long story, and I'm not going to relate this whole story to you, also because this is a workshop. But so I came up with my little model, which is not really a model. It's an approach for thinking. Let's put it this way. It's an approach for thinking. Thinking about what? Thinking about what you want to change and why. Okay, that's the question. The questions are, what do I want to change and why? So what do I do? Okay, so, and I was trying to provide this simple method for doing this inside an organization. And I called this the Agile Evolutionary Forces, which is, by the way, is the title of this workshop. Agile Evolutionary Forces. Because as Julian also explained this morning, I'm not a believer in pre-made frameworks that you can put on the organization and then the organization magically works. Okay? I don't think that you can transform an organization. I think that an organization evolves. It's a matter of evolving. And evolution you cannot really control. Evolution you can promote, but you cannot really control. So which is why I wanted to think in terms of which forces can we use in an organization to promote change, promote evolution without imposing anything. That was the question that I asked myself. And that's it. So I'm leaving. Bye. Okay. So this workshop is about that. Okay. It's a workshop because I would like you guys to try something, to try it out for yourself. So what we're going to do is we're going to create small teams, which is why we messed up the rules so nicely. Okay. Because each island can be a team. I would recommend teams to be not less than 2 people. Probably even not less than 4 people. Okay, that's the 3 minimum. Okay, and then we'll try stuff. Okay. So is it okay for you guys if you want to try to assemble teams? Just
assemble.
Yeah, just create teams. And I'll give you 2 minutes to introduce yourself. Hello, how are you?
When I'm born, this Lucas explosivity for techniques. The wine region also. So then I went away because I wanted to get it right. Now it's because Genau. Wir wollen zumindest aktuell machen.
Almost there. Yeah. Okay. Already performed.
Yes. Nice to listen, but not so good. Not so good, not so perspective.
Wir arbeiten an also wirklich so Schnittstellen.
Okay, good. So now you know each other, right? By the way, would you like to give your team a name? Yeah. So we have 45 seconds. Can you find a name for your team?
Wie war die Abkürzung? Yes.
Wir waren nicht so kreativ, wir waren die A und die B.
Eins von den drei.
You don't feel like one.
Not yet, not getting there.
Wenn wir das jetzt machen.
Can you have a name? Yes. So we are one.
Because we like booze. Wenn ich bisschen aber eigentlich besser
Okay. You guys?
All love Bella.
Bella? Bella. Okay. Twilight, vampires.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. So let me introduce the teams to you. So we have the vampires team. Bella over there. Bella, and we have 42 seconds over there. Okay. Then we have Sauvignon Blanc over here.
So no event.
We have tre, which is the Italian word for three, and unicorns. Unicorns. Okay. It's funny because I don't see any pattern here. Right? There's no pattern at all. Oh, no, actually no. Bella and unicorns, they're connected. It's kind of a fantasy stuff, right? More or less. More or less. And okay, good. So there is one thing that we should probably decide now because it makes it easier to go faster later, which is this. For each team, you might want to have a timekeeper because when we are doing exercises, what I would do is I will put up the clock like this, and then it's much easier if you have one person keeping an eye on the clock to make sure you stay in the time box, and the other people can concentrate on other stuff. So just elect a timekeeper in your team. Okay, you have a timekeeper. Good. So first exercise. I would suggest that inside of each of the teams, you discuss the meaning of those three words: structure, policies, and metrics. So in other words, the question is, what do you think is structure in an organization? Okay, what is structure made of? For instance, something very simple, the organizational chart is part of organizational structure, right? If you have a hierarchy, then that's the structure. But there could be much more. So think of what is structure in an organization? What are policies in an organization? Policies are rules, right? So decide, for instance, a typical policy is the working hours. That's a policy. You're not supposed to show up at 5 in the morning and then leave at noon, right? So
It could be.
it could be. So that's a policy. And then metrics. Metrics is whatever you measure results or people on.
What is making sure?
It could be KPIs or it could be something more subtle.
We need to find examples, but
Yeah,
because
but-
you just
yeah.
defined it.
Yes. You need to find more examples of this. Okay.
So
And I'll give you 5 minutes.
we don't look for definitions, we look for examples now.
Or just definitions, names. For instance, the time schedule is a policy.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, good. 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Büro einrichten, mit also Büro-Environment. Schon was auffallen, weil es ja je nachdem wie Räume sind, die Arbeitsweisen geben.
Organisationsstruktur.
Brainstorming, oder? Genau. Genau, ja. Fokus steht oder? Schreiben gerne das Ganze. Sollen wir das sagen? Communication Flow. Zum Beispiel, ja. Wie wir das sagen, mit Verantwortlichkeiten zu tun.
Okay, informal communication, Teilung of flows,
So, but infrastructure is also like a form of interaction. Policies here. Okay, infrastructure.
Policies ist genau das Code of Contact, also arbeitet man miteinander. Genau, ja.
Of the chart, I'm legal, like, you know, waiting.
Vorwärts ist jetzt auch nicht das Policy. Die Values sind jetzt nicht für die Policies gezählt. Das ist eher so Vision, so sind die Policy. Ja, Policy ist vielleicht strikter. Policy ist für mich eine Regel, die man hat. Also ich muss mich nicht an die Kernvalues halten. Eine Firma kann trotzdem dort arbeiten und alle Regeln halten. Ich werde nur nicht so produktiv sein wie jemand, der was diese verinnerlicht hat, die Kernwerte.
Du kannst nicht gut werden mit Policy ist etwas, wo wir Metrics prüfen können, ob der das einhält oder nicht. Stellenbeschreibung zum Beispiel. Oder ja, das ist etwas, was...
Wobei Policy, wenn du Policy nicht übersetzt hast, nicht das Stichwort zu, sondern das mit einer Geschichte.
Ja, aber das ist etwas, was ich... Aber das ist etwas, was ich trotzdem anschauen kann und es fragt sich, ja, das hat er gemacht oder was ist das? Ich glaube, deswegen steht da nicht Rules, sondern Policy.
Ja, genau. APIs irgendwie genau, Money.
He watches. So yeah, I means to achieve a goal, improvement, money and revenue.
Ich habe schon ein Problem mit das Policy.
How much money did you make?
All three things are
Okay. Done. Oh, done. Minor retrospective. How was your timekeeping? Okay, so you know what to improve the next time. Okay, good. Do you want to share? Anybody wants to share what you think is part of structure, for instance? Yeah. What? Hierarchy. Okay. The roles. Okay. So roles.
Accountabilities. Roles. Hierarchy.
Okay. Oh, and let's hear from the other one. Okay.
Authority?
Authority.
Yes.
So who decides what?
Yes,
Decision
of
or
course.
processes. Okay. I'm asking just to be sure that I understand.
And also informal structure.
Smart guy. Okay.
You don't have to edit if you don't want.
No, it's fine. Informal structure. Okay. Some other team? Time. Time? Time.
Time is set as structure.
Time. Time. Time.
Very philosophical.
Okay. Anything else?
communication channels.
Communication channels. Okay.
Organization setup.
We also had infrastructure.
I'm sorry, you guys what?
Infrastructure, like location.
Rooms,
building,
office.
whatever.
Oh, physical
Office,
structure.
Physical structure.
Physical structure, yes. Or like for instance, in this room, the way the tables are arranged is part of the structure, right? If the tables were in a classroom style, it will be a different workshop, right? So physical structure. And anything else?
Roles and responsibilities.
Okay, roles we have already, and so responsibilities. Okay. Policies, anybody wants to share?
Working hours. Working hours.
Working hours.
Business rules.
Business rules. Anything else?
Code of conduct. Code of conduct.
Okay, code of conduct.
Could be the law, for example, of the country, the company.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Regulation, laws and regulations that you must follow.
Security policy.
Security. Okay. GDPR. Say that again.
GDPR.
What all that protection rule is
The
just
new
the
European-
GDPR. GDPR. Yeah. It's very, very popular at the moment, right? Okay. Metrics? Anybody wants to share?
Utilization. Utilization.
Okay. Of what? Of the people. Okay. So usage of utilization.
Money and revenue. I mean, let's say revenue and bonuses, for example.
Okay, bonuses. So actually, the bonus you assign depending on your
Metrics.
metric on your KPIs.
Yes, yes. Okay.
Anything else?
OKRs. Investments.
Budget. Or like return on investment budget. Okay. Good. Now we don't need to go into the detail of all this stuff, but the purpose of this exercise is to give you some tool to change something. Because whatever you change in the organization at the structure, policy, or metric level has an influence on people. Okay? So you can adjust, you can change people's behavior and the way they communicate, the way they work together by using any of those. I'll give you an example. Metrics are very interesting, for instance, at the human level. Because when you know that you are observed, you behave differently than when you know you are not, right? When you are at home by yourself, okay, with the curtains closed, you walk naked around the room, you do whatever you want. I mean, who cares? And nobody's there. But if you know that you're being observed, then you behave differently. And so when people know that they are measured on something, it's like being observed on something. So if you know that you're measured on something, your behavior changes. A thing that changed recently in a company that I occasionally work with, we realized that people were spending a lot of time in meetings, way too much time in meetings. Okay? So we did something very, very simple. We collected from Google Calendar all the data. So who is in which meeting for how long is the meeting, and so on, how many meetings we have. We just extracted the data and made them public. And we reduced the duration of meetings by 34%.
But it was planned meetings.
Or not formal meetings. Not informal meetings.
What was the reason to do that? So it was your plan to reduce the time jointly meetings?
Because it was strangely too much time.
Okay.
It was clearly not efficient. If considering the outcome of those meetings, it was clearly too much time.
So just to change the transparency of data for us.
Yeah.
So then everyone can see that there's a meeting for 1.5 an hour, and a lot of people may think, okay, why 1.5? Could be a half an hour.
Yeah, it's also self-regulating because it happens something similar to what Jürgen was describing with gamification. People started to check the data and thought, okay, you see, I spend less time in meetings than you do. So, well, who's the top spender? Okay.
Was there something bored or
No, it was just that it was transparent. It was just that it was transparent. So I'm not suggesting that you do this. What I'm suggesting is that when people know that they're measured on something, they are observed on something, their behavior changes. So you have 3 levers to change how an organization behaves. Yes?
But so if you observe and focus on metrics, don't you get the fact that some people that they trick the metric?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Totally true.
How do you
Yeah.
like, for example, just not using the calendar, but writing an email to me?
I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
We must be very wise.
To blur the metric. If you do the same metric again,
Yeah.
I think people spend less, but maybe.
People trick the numbers all the time.
Yeah.
Unconsciously or consciously.
Yeah, but what do you advise about this?
You have to anticipate this. Did it change the behavior of the people or the duration of the meetings? Well,
yes,
change
that's
the
interesting to
reach
know.
with that?
Both. I mean, okay, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but in general, okay, my point is, you get what you measure. Okay, you get what you measure. So, if you measure, for instance, even informally, that's very common in some companies, especially Italian companies, it's very common. People feel measured depending on how long they stay in the office after 5 or after 6. So if you are a person who leaves at 5, okay, then there is sarcasm. Like, okay, you just work half day today, yeah? Stuff like that. Okay. So,
I ignore it.
yeah, it's lovely, right? That's lovely. Yeah. So people, they know that they are informally judged by how long they stay. So you have people who stay longer. They're not necessarily more productive, they just stay longer. If you measure how long they stay longer.
Like in Japan, they stay like the whole day, but they don't work. They just stay there and they eat together.
It's very common to Tel Aviv startup industry. It's very common to work 10, 12 hours, but the productiveness, if you measure the whole, even the whole of the country, it's very, very low. So people stay longer, but I think after 8 or 10 hours, you're done. Yeah, like you can just sit in front of the computer, just
Absolutely.
big brain,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah, yeah. So I know. So my point with metrics is we need to be very wise when we decide what to measure. Because for me is, if I want to change something, I measure it. Okay, it's not the metrics itself. is the effect of the metric that is more important. And then I know that people trick the numbers all the time. Velocity. Okay, we need to talk about velocity.
The thing is, I mean, I'm on a quest to increase knowledge sharing because my metric is cost of loss of knowledge due to turnover or whatever. And my problem is I don't have a metric for that. I can't measure, and I think no company right now is accounting for what we lose when we don't have motivated people. And I just put the question out there if anybody could come up with some idea how to measure loss of knowledge, because I'm searching for this. Okay. The cost of loss of knowledge. If somebody leaves the company.
Yeah. Talk to this guy later. No, sorry. We need to move on. Okay. Because time flies. So my point for this exercise was just to remind you that when you want to introduce change, you can touch any of this stuff and something will change. Will it change in the direction that is useful? We have to find out. Okay? We hope so. We hope so. Literally, we hope so. Okay, so this model I was mentioning to you is something like that. I'm going to draw it here, but then so you can make your own copy. Something like this. I decided that I wanted to use a vocabulary made of 3 major forces. And one force is called safety. Sorry, technology is not cooperating. Okay. Never mind. Revolutions. I'll fix it while you do the next exercise. So one force is called safety. The other force is called direction. And the other force is called growth. Growth. Okay?
Why do you call it forces?
I'll explain in a second. Okay. Well, actually, I can answer now. The reason why I call these forces is because they can bring you to a starting point, to an end point. So, let me give you an example. In every organization, we must have some degree of safety. Is that right? Could be safety of the people working here, or the safety of our products, or whatever, financial safety. We need to have safety of some kind. If we want to change, we need to have a direction in which we want to change. We need to have some guiding point. Okay? And at the same time, we need to constantly develop. As you were saying, for instance, if our knowledge becomes stale, then we are not competitive anymore. So we need to grow in one way or another. Now, I intentionally chose these 3 words. It took me a while to think about it, and I had the help of other coaches, especially Olaf Levitz. We had a nice conversation about this. For a reason. Okay? I picked these three names for a reason. They are intentionally vague, deliberately vague, because I don't want to impose any structure. Okay? I want people and companies to be able to color these words with whatever they want to. Give them their own meaning for their own context. And the reason why I chose these specifically 3 dimensions, safety, direction, and growth, I will not tell you now. I will tell you at the end of the workshop, because I don't want to influence you. Okay? But at the end of the workshop, I will explain. So, what I'm saying is basically that this stuff is always true, but it needs a context, because in a certain context safety can be one thing, in another context safety is a different thing, right? Okay. And also we need a culture, not only a context made of structure, policies, and metrics. This is your context. Okay. But we also need a specific. We need to know at least in which specific culture we want to work. Right? So, which kind of culture do we pretend to be working in the last 10 years? The Agile culture, right? Agile culture. That's what we try to do. We want to work in an Agile culture. And that will be the second exercise. So what is an Agile culture for you? And I have something that I can share. I have this deck of cards. Remember how many? 5, 6 teams? Unicorns. Okay. Sauvignon. Blanc.
Yes.
42 seconds. Actually, this might be too bad stuff. I don't want to confuse you. This one. Okay. So, let me explain. Well, first of all, you will find typos in the text. Don't worry about the typos. That's normal. Okay. There are 4 categories in that deck. You have values, you have principles, you have beliefs, and you have bullshit.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Now, just let me give you a definition. A value is something that in a specific context is more important than another thing. Like, for instance, for some people would say that being honest is more important than being rich. Some people would say that. For me, being honest is more important than having money. Unless my context changes. Okay? If my children are starving, maybe being honest is not so important as having money. Right? For instance. So that's a value. It's something that in a specific context is more important than another thing. In a specific context. A principle is like a rule. A belief, and usually a principle is supported by some kind of experience. A belief is something that you believe in, could be blindly. You just believe in that stuff, and bullshit is bullshit. Okay? So the exercise for you, and I don't think you need more than 3 minutes, is find out which are values, which are principles, which are beliefs, and what is bullshit. Yeah?
Nicht Bullshit, es ist wahrscheinlich Bullshit, aber ich glaube, das sind zu beliebt.
This is a belief. Should bring what to bring in the input.
Belief can become a principle.
Ja, das ist ja oder Principle anschauen wir jetzt mal. Aber jetzt People over Process halt in Value. Das ist ja Principle, so. Das hat ja als Value.
Ich finde es einfach sehr, sehr allgemein. anderen zur Seite. Kann man auch mit anderen besser I think every bullshit may be believed.
Let's say it's bullshit in the context without innovation.
It depends largely on context.
It all depends on the
Context in our mind.
Because it's already, yeah, it's actually
Someone versus bullshit. Oh, it's bullshit. Into the belief.
Okay.
Wenn man das mit dem Evolutionary in Zusammenhang zählt, dann hast du vielleicht
Do you need more time?
Yes.
How long?
A lot more.
2 minutes. Okay.
I think that the difference between belief principle
we can avoid a Documentation ist nicht so wichtig.
Hat jemand was massiv dagegen?
Yes. So a single word of is of course but it's or believe in
Also, maybe believe it in the wenn man jetzt sagt, das gepasst ist in die eine Platten, dann würde ich auch Principle oder Value geben. Ja, genau.
So assume always
würde sogar
Your client
Ihr Client doesn't
How's it going? Okay, can we share?
Na, Bullshit, das
Stimmt schon.
Stimmt schon.
Ja, stimmt.
Bella.
Das ist sogar 50%.
A couple of values from you. Values.
We have two values. People over processes, and hiring the best people, you get the best results.
Okay. Values?
Respect and transparency are the foundation of mutual trust, and simplicity is essential.
These are values. Okay.
We've got respect and transparency are the foundation of mutual trust.
Okay. Okay, outcome over output. Okay. Yeah, thank you. You guys values?
Yeah, we have our values in the principles.
Okay.
We have a lot of principles, and I guess the values are in our principles.
Okay. So it's normal whenever I'm these workshops, even in house or publicly, it's normal that people have different perspectives on values and principles and so on. So it's fine, and I don't really care. I mean, because each of those decisions that you make, they represent your own culture. Okay. So for unicorns, for instance, what's your first value?
We have no values, we only have principles.
Okay, so we have a very pragmatic culture here. They have no values, but they have principles. Okay, you guys, value?
Yeah, we didn't rank them. So the first one is multidisciplinary team group results.
Which one? The
Multidisciplinary team.
Multidisciplinary teams provide value. Okay, and the second one is
Simplicity is essential.
simplicity is essential. Okay. You guys, I don't remember. What was your first value?
Respect and transparency are the foundation.
Okay. So you see, different people have different perspectives, and of course, I just printed these out just to go faster during the workshop. But you are totally free to create your own values and principles and beliefs and bullshit. Okay, totally free to do that. Okay, and when you start thinking about, so what is it that we value in our team, in our company, in our organization? What is it that we value? Okay, some people would say we value outcome over output. It's more important than the result. The result is more important than what we produce. Outcome over output. Okay, that could be a value. Or a principle could be multidisciplinary teams provide better results, if you think that's a principle rather than a value. So, and then you can create your own. Being on time is a good thing. Okay, that could be a value for you, or a principle, and so on and so on and so on. Okay. So when I told you earlier that you live in a bubble, which is your company or your team or whatever, which as a culture actually is your own culture. We had 5 teams that showed 5 slightly different cultures. Okay? And when I told you that you live in a specific context, each company and each team, they have their own context, which is made of structure, policies, and metrics. Okay? You see what I'm trying to explain to you, that you need to start observing who you are as an organization. What is it that you value? How do you organize work and stuff like that? That's important, because if you want to change and you want to go in a certain direction, it starts with awareness. It starts with, okay, what or who are we? Okay? What are we? What do we really live in? Who are we? And then you can make better decisions. Okay. Now, I have to say, not very nicely ripped out a few of these. Okay, that happens. So anyway, I'm going to give one of these to each team, and what I suggest is that you create something like this, except that you have the luxury of doing this landscape, which is what they wanted to do in the first place. Okay? So you have your, from here, I want to get here, and then you have safety, direction and growth. You have your own bubble, and then you can start putting a few of the cards I gave you, you can put up here, because that's your culture. Okay? So can you create something like this? You might need a marker, or do you have markers already?
Not red.
You have more markers than anyone.
Yeah.
I'm not giving you time. Yes. You didn't have.
So this is start, right?
Basically, we can just put what we did right now.
With like a circle here.
What we did in the first, we should put down because the down.
Yes. It doesn't have to be first.
What is in the middle? What do we have to do now? Just draw it or do something? Ah, okay. That will be filled later. Okay, I understand. Then we just
We are basically creating a map. And then we populate the map.
Das nächste Mal ist mit
Okay, yes,
die Principles. Die Beliefs und die Bullshit was neu, ne? Bullshit weg, aber Beliefs und
Now we say what part of that
Gut haben wir gar nicht mit mehr Break so. Das ist das Schau.
Question. Sorry, I'm still in it. So we have to get which direction okay. For now, just
Teilen.
Weil das ist die so das zeigen, was man nicht Can we do it right? Probieren wir aus.
Can you guys be done in 1 minute? Or you're done? We'll be done. Okay, thank you.
Maybe we need
Okay. Just
Aber da müssen wir noch warten, weil da wissen wir nicht, was wir wirklich für sonst habe ich so verstanden. Sowas machen.
Can we move on?
Das ist die
Unicorns. Can we move on?
Oder Beliefs.
Just do it. Okay. So, gentlemen and ladies, so we have I think we have 27 minutes left. Okay. And in these 27 minutes, we need to go to the hard stuff. Okay. Because what we've been doing so far is we've been creating the bubble, right? So your bubble, your boundaries, is defined by your culture and the structure and policies and metrics that you put in place. Okay, that's your bubble. And each team have a different culture, for instance. Okay, and you can imagine you can do this in your organization. You can do this at the team level or at the company level. Okay, you can ask starting questions like, what is our culture as a team? What is our culture as an organization? Which are the policies and metrics that we use in our team? Whatever. Okay. Now, for the last part of the workshop, we need something more concrete, something that is closer to reality. So I suggest that for each team, you have, from the group, you select one case. So what's a case? Is someone that brings to the table, let's say, an almost real problem. Okay? Almost. It doesn't need to be too detailed and so on because we just have 25 minutes. Okay? But something that you would like to work on. For instance, you could say, in our organization, okay, my team has a problem with quality. Right? Code quality. We have a problem with that. Okay? We deliver on time, most of the time, but the quality is getting worse and worse and worse. Okay? That could be something concrete that you can talk about. Okay? Or anything different. We have people who are not engaged. Okay? People are not motivated in our team. That could be a different issue. Okay? Good? So, something concrete. And one person will be working on the team, the other people in the team will be friends. I was almost using the word consultants, and then I stopped it. No, you're friends. Okay? So you are helping this other person to think about her problem or his problem. Okay? Good. So how do you help this person think about this problem? Asking questions about safety, about direction, and about growth. So then again, let me give an example. So the problem could be our team, the people in our team or in our company are not motivated. They are disengaged. Okay? And you can think in terms of safety, direction, and growth. So what would be safety, for instance? What is related to safety when you have people not engaged at work?
They leave. They leave.
They might leave. That's a problem, right? Problem is these people might leave and we would lose knowledge in the company. That's a safety dimension. Or anything else that comes to your mind about safety.
Is safety for the team or for the individual?
That's why I'm asking vague questions.
Maybe he is not happy with his salary.
Is one not happy?
With his salary, is not happy with his money that he gets.
Okay, so that could be
a monetary safety.
Yeah.
Maybe that is missing.
Ja.
So the project may be a difficult one or a silly one.
Yes, silly. But then again, think in terms of safety.
Yeah.
So our people are not engaged. What does it mean in terms of safety?
How maybe are they allowed to fail? What happens if they fail?
For instance,
Do they feel unsafe because they lack skills?
Yeah. So is our environment fail-friendly? For instance, that's related to safety. How people feel safe, how the company is safe, if they stay or if they leave. That's a safety thing. Okay?
So it's all dimensions, right? Individual, team, company.
That's another thing. Okay, since you're asking the question, that will be the second part. In the second part of this exercise, I will introduce the concept of micro, macro, and meta level. Okay, so we will think at different abstraction levels. But for now, let's not be too
We talked about the team, right?
That's a team or everything?
Sorry?
Globally or on team based?
Each team.
Each team.
Yeah.
But we talk about safety in...
Oh, it depends on the problem that the person brings to the table.
Okay.
And then the same thing, you think about direction. So the problem is our people are not engaged, then again. Okay? So what does it mean in terms of direction? And then I mean, maybe we're losing competition because we're not competitive. So the direction we're taking is that we're not competitive because our people are not really contributing. We need to change this direction. We need to make it better. Okay? So that would be thinking in terms of direction. And then the third part would be growth. So people are not engaged. What does it mean in terms of growth? Okay? So then again, the exercise is one person brings a concrete example to the table, and the other people in the team, you help this person by asking questions, you help this person think about this problem in terms of safety, direction, and growth.
The effects that these dimensions
Even,
have for...
yes, or just understanding, observing this problem from 3 different perspectives. Yeah? Okay? And we're going to do this for 10 minutes because it will take you some time.
Yes.
Okay?
Wenn er so viele Probleme auf der Hand gehabt hat. Ja? Ich habe keine Auskunft. Also, wir haben tatsächlich ein Problem, dass das Team demotiviert ist. Nicht wirklich funktioniert. Das hat vielleicht mehrere Gründe. Einerseits, weil der Kunde scheiße ist. Der Kunde versucht Dinge, die was einfach unlogisch sind oder zu realistisch sind, sagen wir so. Und das Management hat Versprechungen gemacht, die was nicht gehalten hat. Also an das Team an das Versprechungen seitens des Management kennen, was nie erfüllbar sind. Und wir haben riesige und deshalb ungleiches Wissen, also sehr große Ungleichheit, sehr große
zuzugeben, das ist natürlich eigentlich so wie offen wird mit dem umgegangen. Sehr offen.
Nach außerhalb des Teams wird es sehr offen, nach außen wird es sehr offen kommuniziert, außer persönlich. Unternehmensintern wird es sehr offen kommuniziert, dass da sehr große Schwankungen sind, so Wissensschwankungen sind. Intern gibt es Leute, die eher zugeben, dass sie was nicht wissen, als Leute, die was weniger zugeben, dass sie was nicht Es ist, glaube ich, zurzeit mehr Zweckgemeinschaft wie
Kann sein, dass die Grüppchen ein großes Team ist.
Ja, dadurch, dass wir 2 Standorte sind. Also wir sind sind halt fit in 2 Teams und dann diese Teams sind jeweils auf 200 beteiligt.
The reason why we have so much
also ich weiß, dass es haben will, aber es ist unter Bedingungen nicht oder nur schwer. Das war es alleine lassen. Aber ich glaube, es sind schon vom Projektmanagement her Punkte zu finden, wie man dagegen vorgeht. Also nur halt, also idealerweise die Entwickler haben sehr wenig startet, theoretisch sage ich mal, dass sie ja, der das gibt schon, das gibt den Kontakt nur jetzt aber müssen wir es erleben. Leute zumindest noch richtig. Ich würde viel lieber das Entwicklungskeit im Schnapp
From the current point of view, we are not rift history. So the goal is to improve the team. I don't think
den Line-Manager ernst genommen, dass der und nicht nur
genau, angenommen, sie wissen das, aber
also das ist nicht nur ankommt, sondern auch wirklich Konsequenzen. Ja, genau. Das kann was für Entscheidungen es gibt. Aber sehr selten. Über das Projekt Zeit, Engagement, ja, also was der
Priorisierung.
Es gibt schon eine Entscheidung, also nicht zum Beispiel, wo der Kunde schon seit sehr viel die muss dieses Zeit, genau, also schon, das ist schon aber so eher, also ich habe jetzt eher so gedacht an manche Sachen, technische Sachen oder bis dann am Ende stellen können wir aus dem heraus schon was werden. Wichtig ist, dass wir geschätzt haben, schaffen und die Punkte aus Ende fertig bleibt. Man merkt aber auch, wo man aus dem mehreren Bereich eher aus der Zustand.
Die Auftragssorge ist
ja, genau. Genau, es geht nicht selbst, sondern es geht um Stil.
Genau, das ist eine Runde, wo jetzt zum Kunde wird einige Leute bei dieser zusammenarbeiten.
gezielt Maßnahmen zu setzen, manchmal ist es dann eine oder Qualitätsprobleme im Geschäft. Das muss man umgerechnet und das ist der Problem. Das nächste
das ist dann die Folge.
Genau.
Das Gefühl von wird auch vielleicht das ist vielleicht einfach an gewissen Punkten.
Jeder macht sein. Ich hätte gesagt, es ist definitiv ein Faktor, aber nicht der einzige. Ich glaube, dass wir das Problem haben, dass teilweise teilweise durch diesen großen Wissenslücken wenn jemand zum Beispiel dann immer gut ist, so wird teilweise immer gut ist, immer schlecht ist, wieder immer schlecht ist. Das haben wir schon das Problem.
Die Situation nicht so gut statt das Brain Game sozusagen
Okay. We have like 10 minutes left. We might be like 2 minutes late, but if there's a coffee break, is that a problem for you? No. Okay. And you will find food and coffee anyway. Okay. Actually, we can go get the coffee.
We can just take it and come back, yeah.
Okay. So let me show you something. The result of this kind of exercise could look something like this. Okay, this is something I've done with an actual company some time ago. Of course, we just use the walls. So now it's not important what's in there. What's important is the levels. Why certain things are here and why other things are closer to the center. Okay, that's interesting. And the reason is this: that we not only we try to think in terms of safety, direction, and growth, but also we can think of these things on different levels. So one level is very simple to understand, it's the micro level. And that's what you see closer to the center. Okay? So closer to the center, they placed things that are at the micro level. So what's the micro level? It's the everyday thing. They're very concrete. They're very, like the hour of the stand-up meeting. Okay? That's a micro thing. The macro level is more about strategy, something more strategic, or it could be roles in the organization. Okay? Or it could be, it's not something specific to an individual or to a specific activity, it's something bigger. Okay? And the meta level is way bigger. For instance, at the meta level you could find the company's vision for the next 5 years. Okay? Very vague, but very big. The micro level, you have something very small, but very precise. Okay? So that's the difference. And the other thing is that what we want to do is we want to use these 3 dimensions at different levels to move from a current state, the current state is the problem that you have, to a desired state. Okay? That's what we want to do, right?
Okay.
And the thing is, to be able to move from here to here, you can change anything. In practice, you can change structure, policies, or metrics, and affect any of these dimensions you get here. I know it's very, I mean, it's not something that you get used to in half an hour or 10 minutes, but then again, I was trying to provide a way of thinking about change which is unrelated to any framework or preconception. Okay, so that's the intent. So if that's fine with you, I would suggest that we use whatever, 10 minutes. Okay. Actually, let's say 7 minutes. So it's 3 minutes. I'll do a recap. Also, I need to tell you why I chose safety, direction, and growth. Okay. And what you might want to try to do is continue what you were doing, except that you introduce these dimensions, meta, macro, micro. Okay. And if you can, try to come up with at least one thing that you can change that is either structure, policy, or metric. Even one. Okay, but just one thing that you can change that can move you closer to your desired state. Okay?
Makro.
Im Prinzip steht es ja schon da.
die Leute haben wir sind da beim anderen
Das ist ein bisschen radikalere. Das hängt immer von das ist ja sehr radikal. Er würde zumindest vorher so schlichte Versuche.
Das waren wirklich Probe. Außer dann haben wir sicher sein können, okay, beim Bergprogramm mit dem Sprint
das ist dasselbe. Das war ja auch Programmierer zu geben.
teilweise da.
Das muss ja auch nicht
You're right. We will not achieve it when it keeps on going with that. We will not achieve it when we improve. Yeah? So this is that. Customer belief. Yeah.
Wie gesagt, ich finde das Thema ist natürlich es wird wahrscheinlich
Wir haben gesehen, dass sie machen wir den ganzen Tag keine Fleißwicklung
es ist ein bisschen eine Sinnlosigkeit, was was beeinflussbar ist, ohne dass man das Projekt, andererseits das Projekt gefährdet. Aber trotzdem müssen die ja, genau.
Let's fail because you will fail anyway. You will fail anyway.
Genau, das haben wir das Problem.
So you're done. Well, you're never done, but I mean, you're sufficiently done.
Wir haben echt wir haben extrem viel probiert, also wir haben anders versucht, aber das die Deadline nach hinten schieben. Ja, genau. Aber das ist nicht so gut angekommen bei vielen Parteien.
So, okay.
Vielleicht kommt alles
Ja,
Ja, so ein bisschen zumindest. Das ist eine sehr, sehr flache Ende von Anfang an.
Gentlemen, ladies.
Vor allem, weil du noch
So okay. So I just want to wrap it up. I mean, we can stay as long as you wish. I mean, it's your coffee break, it's not my coffee break. So if we want to stay longer, we can stay longer, and we can also talk after we close the session. But anyway, any feedback? I would like to have feedback from you. I mean, my question is, did you have some interesting conversation?
Yes.
Okay, because that was the point. The point was to create a framework in which you can have meaningful and interesting conversations about what you want to do, where you want to go, considering your culture and considering other things like structure and so on and so on, without using any word that relates to Agile. Because that was the point, without using any word that has a predefined meaning. So for instance, now I can tell you a little secret, and then you have to promise that you will forget it. Okay? Forget is the right word, because it will influence your mind. The secret is very simple. Those three dimensions, safety, direction, and growth, relate to three different activities in organizational change, which are management, which is safety, leadership, which is direction, and coaching, which is growth. Management. Coaching. Growth is coaching. Yeah. So if you think about it, management is most of management is about making sure that we do the right thing. That's management. Making sure that we do the right thing. Okay? So it's mostly about safety. What was that? Leadership. Okay? The purpose of leadership is to provide guidance, direction. Okay? And the purpose of coaching, in the most general sense, is to develop skills, to develop people, or develop organizations. Okay? But I did not want to tell you, if we started this discussion with management, leadership, and coaching, it would be completely different, right? So, which is why I wanted something more abstract, something more harmless, okay? Like safety, direction, and growth. Very simple concepts. But those concepts have a meaning only inside your culture and inside your context. They are so generic that you need to color them with your specific reality. Okay? So what we did was, we created a bubble, culture and context. Okay? We gave them this bubble 3 dimensions, and we started thinking about the problem in terms of what is safety for this problem, what is direction for this problem, what is growth for this problem, what can we change, how can we change structure, policies, and metrics, considering our culture, considering our context, without using any word that relates to organizational change or agile management. That was the point. And the reason why you had this kind of strange, I assume it was strange, you had this kind of strange but meaningful conversation, is because your mind was more free from preconceptions. Your mind was a little bit more free from preconceptions. Because if I tell you leadership, you think in one way. If I tell you direction, you think in a different way. And if this becomes a practice, now the picture I showed to you, that was a workshop that took 1 day inside the company. Okay? And we generated a lot of ideas on different levels, meta levels, macro, micro, management, safety, whatever. Okay. But if you get accustomed to this practice, even inside your team, and you do something like that for a couple of hours every month, that can generate very interesting conversations and very interesting ideas. So you introduce change, you promote change, you use forces for change, management, leadership, and growth. You use these forces without thinking about management, leadership, and coaching. That was the point. Did you like it? Was it useful? Okay. I mean,
It works.
Huh?
It works.
Well, if it works, that's the whole point. That's the whole point. The reason why I'm doing this stuff is because people can use it and have benefits. So that was it. Do you have any question, any comment, any feedback, any? Let's order beer for everyone.
It was quite nice to have a workshop instead of a presentation.
Yeah. This would not work as a presentation. It would be too fluffy.
Yeah, thank you for
No, sure. My pleasure. Okay. So if you want to keep in touch, just, contact me on LinkedIn or Twitter. And if you want to give me feedback or you want to share ideas or ask questions about what you just saw, just contact me. I'm happy to continue the conversation after the workshop. Okay?
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.